In Node.js, we like in ABAP, we declare the data using data. But do you know in ABAP, we do have two components. One is a name of a variable, for example, LV something, then we do have a type. And this particular type, which we are specifying, we can give it anything. For example, I want an integer or something or something. One drawback of Node.js. So it seems like we are just starting with something and we are talking about the drawback, but it's always good to keep the eyes open, right? So what is the issue with Node.js, or let's just say what we should be very careful while using Node.js is Node.js is not type strict. It means in Node.js, how I can define a variable. To define a variable, I can say where. Where is for a variable. If I want to define a constant, I'll just say const. Sorry, my bad. In case you want some sort of very limited variable, which is just limited not within the whole scope of the component, but within the curly bracket. Let's just say its scope would be very limited, and you want a it's for one or two instance. You can say let. Let is also one of the way to define temporary variable. And here, while defining a variable, you won't be specifying any of the type, saying this is an integer, this is something, but the type of data that you assign to it would determine what kind of variable it is. Okay, so for example, I am saying where LV A equal to, for example, A. Now, in case you want to determine, okay, now what would be the type of this? So we can say type of LVA, and what it would return to you? It would return to you string, because there is a string data that you are assigning to this variable. In case you say where LA, or let's just say LV underscore B equal to 10. Now, if you just say type of LV underscore B, it would say integer. Okay, so depending on the kind of or the type of data that you are assigning to the variable would I can say initialize or define that type of variable into the system. Okay. Next thing is, this is something we can call it as a variable. In case we want to go with a constant, okay, we can say const. And let's just say I would say same thing, LV underscore C equal to, let's just say 10. But here, after doing this, I can also say LV underscore B equal to 11, and that would work. But as it's a constant, the moment you say LV underscore C equal to 11, it would throw an exception. Why? Because the type of variable over here is a constant. Okay. Now, one more important thing that was also very useful when it came to ABAP was internal table. We were using internal tables for in the ABAP. In Node.js, or let's just say if you think of any language, mostly other than ABAP, they contain array. So we can have an array. That array would be something that would be used for storing multiple kind of data. We would be using this object view. I will be discussing this in detail, but just to make you understand what all component a Node.js is containing, I'll just giving you a brief of that for now. Okay, because it's very I can say tedious to just learn individual language out of the context and then jump onto the example. So we would be just giving a brief and then we would be jumping on to the practicals. The array. So when I say array, how I can define that? So for example, I am saying LA of X. I can say a square bracket open close. This that would define my array. In case I want to also give the value at the same time, I can say 10, 20, 30, and this would be an array which is containing these three components. Now, if I want to get the first component, unlike in internal table where everything starts with a 1, now as we all know from our college days, or let's just say from anywhere we might have learned array, that array always starts with a 0. So if I want to get 10, what I'll do is I'll just say L of 0, and that would give me a value of 10. So this is, I can call it as a array with elementary component. Why it's called elementary? Because it's just a single element, just a single element level data it is containing. In while writing our logic, we would also come up with something that is mostly use array, or I can say object array. Okay, when I say object array, what it would contain is I can say LA of object, which would say that I do have a record which is part of curly bracket. For example, let's just define one component for now. And here you are saying that it is containing a let's just say name, and the name of it is, let's just say Sumit. You are saying, let's just say age, and age you are saying, let's just say 99, or then it would be an integer. Okay, so likewise, if you see name you are specifying over here, you are specifying the age, but this is a string, this is a integer, so it internally it's not a single data type to which it is bind to. Okay, so it's a kind of collection of data type, and that is why it would be an object array. In case you want to read this out, you would say LA of 0, that would give you this object dot name, and it would give you Sumit. In case you want to update this as well, that Sumit updated, then this value would be updated over here. So that is, I mean, kind of how the variables and everything are defined. There are plenty more also on the way, but we would be learning as and when we go over them. Now, one more thing. So we learn that we do have a constant, we do have where, we do have let. Now, Node.js is built out of n number of modules, or I can say reusable packages. Okay, when I say Node.js is built out of n number of reusable packages, how I can find that? Where I can find those n number of reusable packages? I can say npm.js. So if you open this www.npm.js is a Node.js repository. It's the it's the ocean of all the Node.js library where you can actually find from. So for example, you want a library to generate an Excel file. You can search for Excel and you would find n number of libraries which are available just to generate an Excel file. There are plenty of them. You can determine which one is something that you would be um, using for the kind of requirement you do have. Okay. For all the SAP relevant library, mostly they are starting with @SAP kind of thing. So for example, UX specification, CDS, and all the generator, everything. So mostly they are, I can say, SAP centric. So it means everything and anything which is built on a Node.js are a combination of package. Now, where actually I'm coming from, or let's just say what is the topic which I'm actually navigating to now. For you to perform any of the operation, you would need that library. Perfect. For example, what we were doing till now is we were trying to implement the service implementation for this handler. And what does it need? It would need a package called package.json does have @SAP CDS. Now I want to use this. Okay, I have defined this library @SAP CDS into the dependency of this project. It means it's available in my project. Where I can find that? That particular library is available in the node modules. All the node component, all the node modules, all the node packages would be part of node modules. Whatever dependency you define over here, they'll get all its baseline code from the npm.js to node module, and it would keep it over here locally so that your program runs efficiently. Right. So I want to use this @CDS, whatever library it does contain. So will it make sense for me to create a local instance of it and use it? Okay, so if I want to just create an instance of it, what I can do is I can say constant I'll define for a CDS. So I am just giving the name of the variable. It can be anything. It can be anything. I'm just defining a name of a variable as a CDS. And when I want to use a component in my particular JS file, what I'll do is I'll just say require, like in C language. So C language is something that we used to learn the very first thing. So what we used to write over there is we used to write hash include and something in the bracket, let's just say stdio.h, the old school or college days, right? When I want to use the same thing in Java, I used to write import something java.io kind of thing. Same way, when it comes to a Node.js, it would need a require. Okay, so if you think from an ABAP perspective, definitely in ABAP, most of the things are kind of reusable. But still, many a time, if I want to use something which is not in my scope, I'll just say include. And your include with a top variable, or let's just say all the subroutines and everything you would be including in your program. It goes the same way. Just the syntax is different. Here we are saying it as a require. So I want to require what? I need in single inverted comma, I'll just say at the rate as. If you see, the moment you say require, it would give you the list of all the packages which are available. This list may not be full because this is just a auto completion program which is running in background. It may or may not detect all of them. But yeah, most of the time it would be correct. Now, one thing, if you see, the terminating character we are using over here is at the rate. Sorry, it is called semicolon, not my bad. In ABAP, we do have a dot. So this semicolon you are seeing over here, if I just remove this, it won't it won't give me an error because this is a Node.js, which is a JavaScript, a kind of a flavor of a JavaScript. And JavaScript is not strict till the time you don't specify use strict. The moment you say use strict, it would consider it as a strict, not over here, but while executing it, it would behave it as a strict. So it's up to you whether you want to go in a strict manner. All you should be ensuring is you are writing a right line of program. So in case you are missing minor thing, at least from a line termination perspective, semicolon and all, it won't throw you an error. Okay. Now, so just stop me at any point in time you feel you do have a question or you are not clear. Okay, because this is altogether new language. I was also having plenty of question when I started learning this, so it's obvious to have questions. That's not an issue. Now, let's just discuss something on the visibility part. Okay, visibility part says, for example, I do have I have specified require over here, right? It means I am talking of the at the rate CDS package, at the rate SAP CDS package. Same way, I would also like to go with some sort of modularization, saying if I am writing any sort of custom code logic for employees, I'll generate a separate JS file for that. In case of employee reuse, I'll also generate a separate file for that. Same goes for anything and everything. I want to go with a modularization. Now, whenever I'm going with a modularization, I'll just import that using the same kind of constant. I'll just say require, I'll just specify the name of the file and it would be reusable. But let's just say I do have 50 functions specified in my Node.js file. When I say require, it won't give you an instance. It won't allow you to use all of them. It would only allow you to use the component which are made global. So there are two component, or let's just say two kind of variable, two kind of component, local and a global. When I say local, for example, you do have generated a function called convert date to string, for example, and it is taking your date as an input, and it is having a string as your output. Okay, so that we would be specifying in return anyway. But now, while doing this, what you are identifying is this particular component is only required for my logic, which is saying update employee. this particular method, I want to call this update employee would be calling this particular method call convert date to string. And here I am passing, for example, LV today's date. That's it. So this particular component is something that I can expect it would be having a call from remote. Some outside component would be calling this. So what I need to do this, I want to make this accessible from the world outside, but this is fine to be a local one, just to have some sort of privacy, just to have some sort of I can say security. So what I'll do is to make this public by default, everything and anything that you define over here is a local. No one would be able to see that. But if you want to make that public, you have to specify module.exports equal to. This module.exports is a word that would be used in case you want to make anything public. So either you specify it over here, or at end of the file, you can also specify module.exports equal to update employee. So what it would do is it would make this particular update employee method as a global one. So going forward, if you want to, if you do have an instance of, let's just say, employee handler.js file, and if you are willing to call that, it would allow you to call that. But this convert date is something that won't be usable. Okay. So now let's just get back over here. So here we are writing a implementation. Now that implementation should be visible to the world outside, right? If my component is only visible to me internally, it won't be usable. So what I'll do is I'll just say module dot exports equal to, and here I have to write a CDS service implementation. This is something which is a wrapper for all your service, and you are getting the instance of the service in SRV. So all of your implementation file would contain a code like this, simple one. Now this would become a wrapper. This is visible from the world outside. And in case you want to write any of the logic, you would be writing it over here. So for example, I want to write a before handler or after or anything, you would be doing that. Okay. So I'll just take a pause over here. Are we all with me till now?
Sumit?
Yes, Irisha.
Yeah, so if at all I'm using the backend SRVs, directly can write the name of the SRV or how I need to
Backend SRV. What do you mean by backend SRV?
means S4 HANA SRV, we have created some CDS
Okay.
CDS.
So in case you have created a backend service, ERP service or S/4HANA service that you are talking about, in that case, you have to create a destination of that. One way is that you have to define a destination, you have to define it in the dependency. I am saying how you can make this particular component of your SCAP project that you are generating public. In case you want to use that, there are two ways. Either you have to first, once your service is generated, define a destination of that. That destination you have to define in dependency in the MTF YML and in the require section of Node.js, and then you would be able to use it. In case you are not defining destination, you have to give the full URL and go with one more package of Node.js called Axios. So Axios is a package that is mainly used for calling all the HTTP clients. So all your REST APIs based call, in case you want to put a GET call or a POST call or anything, that can be done using Axios.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So we would be going with our first implementation of third-party integration with the Azure. It's a integration of SAP with Microsoft. Mostly we are planning for today, but let's see if time permits today or let's just say tomorrow. But we would be having this integration that's on our agenda. So I guess by that you would be bit of clear how I can create something which is not in my world.
Okay, another one more thing, Sumit. For example, we have created a sub account of Singapore, right? So when we are doing the processing from the India, so the data, how it will be saved based on the Singapore timings, it will be saved the data. Otherwise, based on the India timings, it will be saved. When we are retrieving the data, right? So automatically it will convert and it will show the record, or we need to convert that information.
So in case you are going with standard handlers, in case you are going with the way we are using it till now, it would be automatically converted. But in case you are going with a custom handlers, let's just say Node.js handlers and everything, you have to write your own logic, because APIs are already in place, which is for standard handler, it is already converting based on the user time zone. But let's just say you are writing your logic, then you have to first determine the user time zone. Table would be always storing time zone in the UTC. So as it's global, you would have to get the UTC timing, convert into it into something which is user's current time zone, and then maybe pass it into the output.
Okay, okay, fine, Sumiti. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, so let's just say we are over here, and let's just say whether we do have a service working, because as it's a local client, many a time we also find that it may or may not work. Okay, what we were going till now is data model. In the data model, we do have this particular component, and now I want to let's say generate one more component, which is just a structure. Okay, so for example, I want to get some sort of saying CDS persistence skip. When I say skip, when I say skip, like when I don't say anything, it would generate a table that we all know. When I say exist, it would connect to the database artifact if they are available. When I say skip, it won't generate anything. So for example, I am saying entity over here, and I am saying employee local info. Okay, and here I am specifying a entity which is having a key as a, let's just say ID, and I'll just say string 36, and I'll just say name of the employee. Here I'll just specify it as a, let's just say string 255, and let's just say email ID. But this time I don't have anything which is connected to this. So I'll just say string and here I am specifying, let's just say again 255. So I do have employee local info. As I created the entity, what I'll need is I need to expose this. I'll just go in my service and I'll just say entity employee local as select from. Okay. So I do have an employee local, which is connected to this entity, but this entity does not have anything internal. So in case I generate a test client for this HTTP client where I want to do the testing for this, I want to say, let's just say test.http. I want the get employee local details. So I'll just say get and this particular URL. For example, let's just open it in a browser. So there is a service. So I can say v2 employee transactional. And I'll just load the service metadata. So it is loading the service metadata for me. So I'm getting the OData v2 version service metadata over here. Now I want to get the local employee details. So what is the name of the entity? I should be able to find it from here. Employees, employee reuse, department, dashboard, and this is my employee local. Just close this, replace this with a employee local. Let's copy it from here. Just say get. What you are getting over here is okay. It says no malform DB credentials because that's what I mentioned. I mean, after some time, it would just stop the connection. So let's just connect first. to the service, and then I guess maybe we would. So I'll just say I have to connect to this DB. So this particular component, which is, I mean, as it was running from a quite a long time, or let's just say we generated it, I guess last week. It's not still in the running mode. So it was employee trans over here. I'll just go back. I'll just disconnect this. Now let's just try to connect this. Okay, it should turn into a gray one. Then we can reconnect it. Yeah, I'll just connect. It is processing that. Yeah, this is the one. Now it would ask me for my email ID. It should start deploying this in a while. Something is starting. Yeah, as it's connected to a synonym, mostly there is something that we have already observed, so that's not an issue. Let's just say CDS watch again. So the service is running. I'll just try to get this. Mhm. Okay, no worries. Let's just do one thing. As we all know, here in the JS file, I told we do have multiple components that we can work on. Now I want to do some sort of implementation for employee local. So actually I was expecting a different kind of error because it should say either no handler found or something. But as this particular project, okay, we do have multiple component over here. That's would be the let me just try reconnecting it once. Okay, let's do one thing. This particular project is giving us some trouble. Okay, let's just we quickly generate one more file over here. Oh, sorry, my bad. This was not the one. Over here. Because they do have very limited connectivity, this particular with the local one. I mean, the trial account, that's the only reason it's giving us trouble. So for example, I am just saying btp.local. There's a namespace, and I'll just copy the name of the data model that we just created some time back. So we would be going with the same implementation, but let's just go with a separate project because it's trying to temper something. Okay, so we just generated CDS persistent skip one employee info. Now I'm going with a okay. So here I'll just say CDS. This is something we also did earlier. I can say employee service. Okay. Now I want to say employee local as select from PL dot. We do have employee local info. Right? We just did that. Okay, and one more thing, let's just pick quickly from here is let's just convert this to something that we want. It should be npm install because we want to install the node package. Okay, now we are can't read property on of undefined. What is it just doing? Okay, now let's just read this particular project. What we just did, employee local, the server data model we do have. We are over here. Let's just say we don't have anything for now. Now let's just go step by step.
MTA we need to add, right?
No, MTF file is not required till the time we don't want to go with the deployment.
Okay.
Yeah. So this server.js, maybe we missed something while. Let me just close the window. It's not on this, it's just because of some sort of file. Okay. It would install all the local dependencies first, whatever were required in the package.json. Okay. Okay, now let's just say type read can't read property on of undefined that is coming from CDS OData v2 proxy. That is what it is. getting it from here. It is not getting it from here. Okay. So this proxy file, does it have some issue why it is not giving us over here? Should be same thing. This server.js, copy this from here. It's employee local. So in the standard package, it is figuring out something server.js and this particular proxy. Okay, what is the package version? Many a time what would also happen is, yeah, here it is 1.9.0 and here it is, it just tried getting some sort of newer version 1.9.0. This is the one. Okay, did you observe what did just happen? So, so this is also one of the interesting thing. We had faced this in multiple projects. So, okay. So what is happening is in the package.json, if you see this could happen, and this is one of the drawback of many a time using multiple open source packages. So if you see this project we generated today, employee local, and here we tried installing this. So what ideally it would do is it would try to install the latest version of this. Okay, and by the time we spend 1 week in the last session when we installed this, it was going with a version 1.9.0 because this was the latest one. Okay, and in this session it is upgraded to 1.9.1, and here we do have some sort of discrepancy because while as a part of this package 1.9.1 that just got released has some sort of bug, has some issue, and that is why the release version 1.9.1 was giving us an error. If you observe it clearly, we what it was saying is the on in SI this particular package, the standard code had some issue. So we have a stable version. 1.9.0 was a stable version. We figured out because we were using it earlier in the earlier project that we created, and that's why I just I just changed the version over here. Now, if you just say arrow, it would say if it would try to get minimum this version, but if there is any version after that also, it would try to get that and it would fail. So what I did is I just removed that arrow 1.9.0 and I just say npm install. So it just checked the dependency, deleted the 1.9.1 version of that, instead got the 1.9.0 and reinstalled it over here. And hence we are able to run this particular package. So 1.9.1 version in this particular latest release has some sort of bug, and that is why it was failing. Does it make sense? Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
Sumit.
okay. So now let's just say I am creating one more file, or let's just say, yeah, we do have the service over here where we were over here in the service. Perfect. Now I want to do the implementation for this, but I don't have any sort of component which is already available, which is having the data for this. So I'm saying employee local this. Now, if I just try to do the test client, I want to do some sort of testing for this. So I'll just say new file test.http. Okay, and here I want to load the metadata, for example. So I do have this v2 employee metadata. This is my service. I'll just say get. I'm able to get the data. I am able to at least get the metadata. I'll just copy this, which is saying employee local. I'll just replace it over here. It is not getting any data over here, but we should ideally get an error. Let's see, we copied it with the, yeah, we copied it with the CDS persistent script. Okay, not an issue. Now, what we would do is I want some sort of custom handler also to be implemented over here. So I'll just say at the rate IMPL. And here I'll just say in my current directory, I do have a file called, let's just say service impl.js, for example. And I want this file to be generated over here because that is something that we would need. Okay, now as we just did over in the last one, I'll just say require I would need at the rate SAP CDS. And next we need to give some sort of service implementation. For example, I'm saying module.exports equal to CDS service. Now I want that whenever a call is made for this particular service, which service? Employee service, employee local. These entities, whenever it is getting triggered, it should execute my code instead. So for that, I can say add implementation for employee local. I'll just say SRV. Now, if you see, there are multiple events. Okay, so there are plenty ways. Either you can say directly on delete or something, but there are three standard handlers. One is okay on, before, and after. So when I say SRV on, so what it would do is it would say what all events you want to handle. So I'll just say I want to handle a read call. Get call in terms of a CDS is called a read. It's a kind of a CRUD queue. Same CRUD queue, whatever we say, create, read, update, delete, same thing. So whenever a read call is made on what entity target, what entity you want to make the handler for. So I'll just say employee local. At that particular point in time, I want to have my handler implemented. If you see, it says expected argument handler to be a function. So you have to specify what handler you want to specify for getting the actual data. So what I'll do is I'll just say one more handler file I'll need. So there are two ways. Either you can have any local function. You can define a local function over here. But as soon as your project starts growing, this file would be very congested. It would be very hard to interpret that. So what my preferred way of doing is I just say employee handler.js, for example. Okay, so I do have this employee handler.js, and this employee handler.js is responsible for this particular project. And here I'll just specify one more component which says module.exports. Why I'm doing the module.exports over here? Because I know I want to have some sort of component which is visible to the world outside as well. And here I can give the name. For example, I want to give get employee detail. And here I'll just say async function. Okay, let me just go step by step. I'll just say function, and I would specify one parameter. Now, why this parameter REQ is coming, that is something, let's just go with the standard documentation as well. But for example, or let's just say for now, consider I do have a method called get employee detail. This is something I want to use. How I can use that? For that, I would need a employee detail, right? And this employee detail, if I want to use, as I mentioned, what you have to do over here, you have to go in the service implementation and you have to specify that constant you want to use EMP handler equal to require. What you would need now? I would need a file which is coming from my current directory. That's why I'm saying dot. And now you would be able to use anything and everything which is available in this particular file with a component module.export. So this get employee details should get triggered. And for that, I have to specify LOEMP handler this, and you are saying get employee detail. Now this particular employee detail would get triggered whenever you are calling the read, whenever you are triggering the read call. For example, I don't want to give anything, so I'll just say return empty. But at the same time, I'm also saying console.log custom handler triggered. I'll just say send. If you see, I just got a message called custom handler triggered. Okay, let's just stop this over here and do one more thing. Here we do have one more option called debug. Okay, and this is something that would be very helpful whenever you are writing any sort of code logic. So what I'll do is I'll just say employee handler. I'll just put a breakpoint. How I can put a breakpoint? You can go in any file where you want to put a breakpoint, put a cursor, and what is something that I want to execute. So you do have all the configuration which are there in the run. So same way I have to generate one more configuration for running this. And for me to generate a run configuration, there are two ways. Either you can have a run configuration without a HANA module or with a HANA module, right? We did that earlier. So in case I want a run configuration with or without a HANA module, I'll just observe one of the file called package.json. So this package.json, which I do have over here, is for BTP btrans. And I do have one more file, which is for this particular project, package.json, employee local. We have added one more dependency earlier. You remember, in case I want to connect to my SAP HANA, what I will need? I would need one more dependency which says CDS, which says requires. Yes, it was DB and kind HANA. Yeah, it would require a DB of kind HANA. So I'll just go here. Okay, so now we do have a, okay, why it is giving the error over script? Where yeah, now I guess it was a time lag. Now I want to generate a run configuration. How I can generate a run configuration? I'll just say plus over here, and I would choose the project where I want the run configuration to be mapped. So we are trying to connect to the database. We are trying to connect to the database over here because our ultimate motive is to connect to the debugger. Okay, to connect to the debugger, we would need a run configuration over here. Yeah, so we do have a project called employee local. I'll just click over here. And now we are giving it a name. Meanwhile, till the time this gets open, let's just say CAPM. Yeah. So we do have employee local. Can you see it over here? I'll just expand this. You can see DB HANA. I'll just connect this. And here you do have an option to connect to which database you want to connect. I'll just say dev HDI shared. It would create a link. It would install your HANA database as well as HDI client. Okay, and now it would deploy this to a database. One more thing over here, we are talking of the custom implementation. What did we call it as a srv.on? So you can search for srv on, you would find core service APIs. And here if you see, you do have multiple handler registration, which would say what all kind of registration you can make srv on, before, after. If I click on this, you would see that I can have a on handler which would get an event. Okay, that event would be read, let's just say name of the entity and whatever handler you want to implement. Okay, and what it would receive, a service handler would read need, or I can say receive two parameters, one REQ and one next. REQ is nothing but your request parameter. That is something that we are interested in. What it is having. Not an issue. All we need is a run configuration to be available over here. Yeah, now you can see we do have a debug. In the debug mode, we also do have a run configuration. I'll just select the employee local. That's what I selected. I'll just say run over here. And now this project would get executed, but in the debug mode. And here we do have all the option, whether you want to watch a variable, whether you want to put a breakpoint of variables value you want to see, or the call stack. Like we do have it any in any debugger, same way we do have it over here. So it would just start the debug console. Okay. Now, if you just go over here and if you just click over here, if you see, we are in the debugging mode. So what are the steps for you to configure the debugger? First, you have to set up the run configuration. Okay, in the run configuration, you would be able to find whatever you want. For example, I do have REQ variable. Here, we do have a capability that whenever you put a cursor on any sort of variable, it would give you the detail of that. So for example, we do have REQ. This REQ is responsible for doing all the transactions. So if you see what all capabilities does it have, in case you want to raise any error, in case you want to get the query, the input parameters, what all I am getting, in case you want to see what kind of call it is, in case you want to pass out any sort of data. Okay, everything can be done over here. You can put a watch on the variable as well. So here there are variables one, but in case you want to keep on watching, like we do have a watch point, same way you can have all the variables and you can say req.data, for example, any sort of change that would occur on this, it would on real time you'd start finding it getting reflected over here. That is called watch. Okay, all the breakpoints and everything that you do have over here, you would be able to figure it out over here. So this req is a request parameter. Same way we do have a next. There are two parameters of that. One req, one next. When I say I am saying req, this is responsible for generating any transactions. Okay. Okay. So let me tell you. For me to connect to DB, I would need a connection to the database. So I can say DB connection, or let's just say many a time we call it as a JDBC connection, JDBC connections. Same way for HANA to perform any sort of database transactions, it would need this RAQ. Now, as we are having a fixed values over here, we won't need a RAQ, so it would be unused. So in your code, whatever variables are something that you are not using, you would find it in a gray mode. Once you start using that, you would find that that variable is getting converted to something. Okay. Now, this particular debugger we are in, and let's just say I want to pass some sort of fixed values from here. So for example, I do have ID, name, and employee ID. So I'll just say I want a ID whose value is EMP01, for example. Name, I want to generate it as a now. If you just execute this, this would get executed the mode it was earlier into. Let me just stop and rerun this. Okay, so in case you, after doing any sort of change, are understanding it in debugging, and now you want to go in the real one, you can again same way go over here. But now what we want to understand over here is fixed value we learned, how I can do that. Okay, the port, yeah, this is also one of the pain point whenever you are running whenever you are running two services. Okay, here in local execution, it would give you one dedicated port where your service could run. And that's why if your debugger has not stopped terminated correctly, it would give you this sort of error. Can you see it is saying EMP01, the data which I passed. But now I want to go one more step further. I want to have some sort of logic. I want to have some sort of logic in order for me to have, for example, I want a dedicated database table where I do have the data, but after having that particular data, I want to, after having that particular data, I want to, one second, this, what is happening? Okay, after having that particular data, I want to manipulate it in a way and prepare the data, which is a combination of this. So for example, I do have a department over here, and I want to write my logic to get the department over here with a string. Okay, let's just go one more step deeper. So this CDS persistent skip gives us the functionality that you can override the, or let's just say you have to write your own logic because it doesn't have anything beneath that. But in case you do have something, for example, I do have an entity over here like this, and here you do have a employee DB. Okay, and here you do have a ID generation automatically available out of the box, as we learned that I do have a CUID which would give me the ID and managed. But other than CUID and managed, I want a name which the employee would pass, or let's just say while registration and the user would pass. But I want to generate the front end ID of employee front end ID. This is something which would be visible to the employee, right? Because CUID is a 36 character key, but when I talk about anyone's employee ID, it can be 1234, it can be 5486, anything random. So I want to generate an employee ID, and that employee ID should get determined from the backend. So I can expect name to be passed, but while name is getting inserted, while a new entry is getting created onto the database, I want that I would be, or I should be able to generate this employee ID. So what I'll do is I'll just expose this first. TT employee as select from. Okay, and I'll just say employee DB. And now this particular employee, this is going via custom handler. That is something we know. But now this particular component, yeah, it does not have a HANA deployed, and that's why it would fail first. Okay, not an issue. Let's just regenerate this because it would need some sort of JS file right internally. Okay, okay. Mostly perfect. So I feel, do we have a Cloud Foundry login? Feel we won't be. Now try connecting this. Try deploying this. Why it is still not getting this particular component? Some sort of certificate issue, it seems. This empty would have those both the modules, but currently we don't want to go with anywhere the deployment, so we should be fine. All we need is just connect a new runtime container, because last time as well it did happen with us that whenever I'm going with a loop execution, if it's a fresh earlier one, it was containing some sort of cache, and that was hampering the runtime execution. Dev HDI shared, yeah, this is the one we ideally connect to. Do we have that DB running? Because I suspect the DB module, the database that we just started, did it just got started? Yeah, that is the reason. It never got started, and that is why it is hampering us. So this particular DB should be in running mode for us to have anything on the database level working. I thought we clicked on the start, so it would have worked. I mean, while going with the revision, and I guess that just got missed. So this should be in a running mode. That's what we started, but it never got started. Okay, so now what we are going through is we'll just keep on monitoring till the time. Yeah, if you see it, just say update in progress. We would need this to be in running mode for us to actually proceed. But till now, what we are ultimately doing is we do have a scenario, or let's just say we are thinking of a hypothetical scenario where the employee DB, okay, would have all the data getting generated automatically because ID is getting generated out of the box. Name is something which user would be passing, but employee front end is something which the user won't be passing. I mean, whatever is the actual employee ID that would be visible to him. So we would need some sort of handler for this that would get triggered. Yeah, it's still the same. That's what it is happening. So for us to have that employee ID generated, what we would need is we would need something that gets triggered before an employee's entry gets posted onto the database, right? So I can say I can add an implementation to generate the employee ID before a DB entry. And how I can do that? I can say SRV before. And here I can say create. So the moment a create call is occurring onto the database, I can expect that this is the logic that would get executed before anything. Before anything gets executed, this before would get executed, and here we can manipulate the data however we want. So for example, I want the employee this to be executed, and I can say in the employee handler, for example, I want to have one more controller, one more function. So I can say module.exports dot generate EMP ID. So I can say hello emp handler dot generate emp id. Let's see what is the status. Yeah, now it seems to be in a running mode. So let's just stop this, go in the run configuration. Let's try our luck once again. And now I'll just say once this disconnect, we'll just try connecting it once more. Okay, I'll just connect this. Yeah, now it works. So if you see, I guess that was the same issue in the earlier project as well. So ultimately, it was not run. The DB was not running. We expected we started that, but it never got started. Okay. Now, if I just say CDS watch, if I just go over here, now we should have a MTA, or let's just say over here. It is doing internally. Okay. Here we have some sort of a script. So the build is not building all. So yeah, this is something that we generated. Okay, 1 second. See if this works. And the scripts. Perfect. Now, one last time. It's very slow. We should get a button over here. Yeah, yeah. It's not. Why it is behaving abnormally today? Hmm. Do we have gen, and that there should be a db, there should be a SRV, SRC, and there should be a file that got generated. Yeah, we do have both. Employee db, yeah, we do have that. Why it is still failing? Okay, yeah, okay, one second. Let's see. I think one last step. There is no operation db key impressions. What's happening to this? Creation of service key initial. Sorry guys, it is creating some sort of unwanted behavior. Yeah, now it should work. Yeah, now if you see, it's not getting any results, but it's not giving us the error because we don't have any data into the database. So what I just did is, as in the local mode, it was creating some sort of trouble because maybe the local instance of DB is something which is not getting connected. So in CAP model, we ideally have two kind of DB. One which is global, which is kind of running as a service on BTP, and one which is meant for the local testing. So I guess the local server has some issue. So I just added the container in the target and I just said CDS deployed. So how I write it as, sorry. I'll just close this. So how I wrote it as CDS deploy double dash to. Now we have to specify the database to which we want to deploy. So we are going to deploy it to HANA database. That's why I just wrote HANA. Many a time you would also find you can deploy it to some sort of SQLite. So currently we don't have it, but in case you do have SQLite, you can say SQLite, and then you can say the name of the file, for example, to SQLite, and you can say SQ, or let's just say db.db, anything. Let's just say SQLite.db. So it would generate a database file system. But here we do have a live server, so we are just deploying it to HANA server. So I guess in the local instance has some issue. That's why we just deployed that database. And now if you see, it is running. So we do have an employee detail. Now let's just go one more step forward. What we want is, so we do have two things on our agenda. Okay, so when I say get employee, it is executing it normally because we don't have anything in between. Okay, we don't have anything in between to intervene. So for example, if I just go into the service implementation, yeah, I'll just close this so it would be more readable. Here we do have a create. So we have not injected any call with that would execute in between the read. We are just executing something after the create. Okay, or like sorry, before the create. So what I'll do is in the service implementation in the method, I'll just go in that particular method, and here I'll just say first whether it's getting executed. So I'll just say console log executed before create. Now I'll just try to run the create example. So I'll just try to create an entry. So I can say enter employee data. I can say post. Okay, let's just copy this whole thing. You would say we want a content type of application JSON. And as you know, in the data model, we have used multiple aspects. So ID would get generated automatically. Timestamp would be also added. Name is something that we are expecting that we would pass, no one else. Okay, so I'll just say um, I want a name as a Sumit. Okay, so I would get a name as a Sumit, and that name is something that would be inserted into the database. But on top of that, I want one more thing to get added. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just stop this for now, and we would directly jump onto the debugger to see what all information we are getting and what all thing we can intervene. So the story is we do have a employee table. We do have a name that user is passing, but this is something that we want to generate. Okay, so I'll just say BT employee local. I guess this is a version that we are executing, and I'll just say start debugging. It would open it into the debugger mode. We would be into that. Now, compared to what we had seen into the debugger, what are the changes that we can expect? In the get call, in the read call, earlier employee local was not having anything into the data, but here we are passing few things, right? Here we are passing name and everything. So that is something that we can expect. So I'll just say post call. Now you are into the debugger mode. Now if you observe the REQ closely, it is having REQ. It is the create event for which it just got triggered. Here we do have a data. In the data, we do have few things. We do have a ID that got generated automatically because ID is something that is a CUID is generating. Now, what timestamp it would insert into the database depends on the when the entry is getting inserted into the database. Let's just say for now, you are holding the execution till 30 minutes, then it would not insert the old timestamp. What it would do is it would wait till the time that the entry is not getting inserted. So these are the two things that we are already getting, but we are not having anything for the employee external ID, but we want that to also to be inserted. So what we'll do is, if you want, yeah, one more thing here, these are your statements. So this is kind of execute. This is a step over. This you can think of F5678 in your normal ABAP debugger. If you want to restart, these you how you can restart, and these how you can stop the debugging. So I'll just stop this for now, but I am very clear, or let's just say we are here. Can I type something? It is not responding on that. So here, if you see in the watch level, I can say req.data. And here I do have that. It says req.data does have name and ID. Instead, if I want to add one more thing, that req.data dot this employee front end ID should also have some sort of value. Okay, for example, I am saying currently for hard coded one that this employee front end ID should be initialized to dummy, or let's just say employee ID EI underscore 01, for example. Okay, so the moment you say EI 01, you are in the before. You are in the before execution. So you are changing something. This data would also be part of the req.data, and going forward, this is something that you can expect to be part of your output, or I can say to be part of the database table when the entry gets inserted. So I'll just stop this for now. Okay, this is null. Okay, this is null. It means we are not having any sort of data available, at least till now. I'll just stop this. Just close this. Let's just EDS watch. Now, if you just go over here, try to get the entries which were earlier added. But that was not added. So fine. I'll just say send request now. And it just created an entry with EI01 this. And now if I just say get, if you see the entry that got persisted has a EI01. How? Because I intervened over there. I do have a control before an entry. Forget about an entry. Before an operation actually gets performed. Okay, you do have a control over there. Before an execution actually gets performed, you can manipulate however you want. In case, let's just say there are plenty of validations that you want to execute, saying if someone is trying to create something, but is he authorized to do that? Okay, and you want to write your logic to check the authorization, right? So whatever logic that you write in the before, and now let's just say you are saying that person is authorized and you are not changing anything, you are just allowing the execution to go through, so it would execute. But in case you are not happy, or let's just say in case you are not able to validate that the user is authorized one, and you want to raise an error instead, so you can raise the error then, and that would get considered, and the before execution before would stop the execution, and no further execution of on and after would get executed, and the entry won't get inserted. So before, you can think of a place where anything you want to initialize, or let's just say validate before it goes into the database. That is a place where before would come into picture. In case you are working on for example, a material, you are creating a good receipt. After creating a good receipt, you want that the material stock should also get updated. So in the after handler, you can write any activity where after an execution has been performed of create or update or anything, you want to update certain dependent tables. Then after that activity has been performed, after actual database update has been done by the standard handlers, you can write your code in the SRV after. Okay, so for example, I'm over here, and now I'll just go over here, and I'll just say I want to generate the employee front end ID. So this REQ is the one that we would be using for that. So what we would do is we would generate a transaction, as I mentioned. earlier? We can have a transaction like a JDBC connection. If I want to execute, what I'll do is I'll just say constant tx equal to CDS dot transaction, and here you can pass the REQ, the request object. I can say read, and here, yeah, here you can say tx, the transaction, and you have to run it. You have to run the transaction that you can specify over here. And now you want to select the data. Now you want to select the data from a database. So how you can do that? You can write a select. Now here, select and everything has a specific syntax. It's not like select star from this. Here we do have a dot convention. Okay, so in case you want to connect to a table, you have to first connect to that table. So for example, I do have an employee DB table. You do have an employee DB table, and you want to figure out what all entries were there, because before inserting, you want to check, okay, employee 01, whether it's created. Yes. Then I want to create 02. So maximum plus one, that's what you want to create, for example. So you can determine the employee ID over here by querying this particular table, employee DB. Okay, so what you will do is you would just say, I want to connect to the table. So first, there are 3 steps. Connect to DB. Okay, you can say const. What table you want to use? I can say this, and you can say cds.entities. And here you can pass the namespace. So what it would do is it would try to connect to this table. It would try to get the instance of this table. Like I want to call write a select query on EKKO. I can directly write select from EKKO, but that is not the case over here. This CAP works in a mode of JDBC. You have to first connect to the table. You have to initialize the transaction. And now you are saying that if you see this employee DB is not being used. Okay, you are saying that I want to have a select call getting executed on this employee DB. So what you can do is you can say from. So the moment you write dot F, it would say from, and here you can specify the table. So you want to get everything from the database table. That's what you are writing. In case you want to select the columns, you can say dot columns. For example, you want to select the maximum of EMP front-end ID available till now. As max EID. Okay, so let's just say I would put a breakpoint over here and see step by step what is happening into the while execution. Okay, so I'll just go over here in the debug mode. So this is my debug. So the bug kind of thing that you can see over here is for debugging. I'll just start debugging over here. Okay, now so as the service is running, I'll just say send request. I'm in my before. Okay, now I want to just either if this step into is nothing but your F5 kind of in a web, like where you want to go inside anything. And here this step over is like its statement would get executed, but you are not going inside anything. So you are first connecting CDS entities. You are connecting to this. It just got connected. Now you are saying CDS dot transaction REQ. So this TX would get initialized. So if I just go over here in the watch, I'll just say TX, okay, is undefined. If I just say step over this, so now TX is initialized. Ideally, earlier it used to be kind of auto refresh. Now it is not refreshing those. That's weird. That's weird. But yeah, if you see, it just initialize the HANA database. So I do have a TX which is connected to HANA database, which is having a request called OData request. So it is a type of a OData request. Okay. Now we want to call this method. So if you see, this TX is nothing but what you can think of it. So TX, whenever you are saying CDS.transaction, you can think of a singleton design pattern where you are calling a static method, passing a parameter, and it is giving you an instance of an object. So TX is an object. It is a database object. Okay. And now you want to call the method run. Okay. The moment you call the run method, it would connect to this database, query this information. But yeah, if you see, I'll just say step over F6. You can see LR read. Now, if I just add this information into my LR read, you can also put a cursor and see the details. That's also fine. But just to have a, if you see, we do have one information. It's a promise. Promise is pending. So Node.js is asynchronous language. When I say a asynchronous language, what is it? So for example, if I want to say this statement, I want to connect to this. So if let's just say connecting to a database is taking more amount of time, then it would keep on executing this in one thread and the another thread would start executing this. The moment this is done, it would just go over here. Likewise, okay. So let's just say tx.run or many a command. If you check the standard documentation, you would find that okay, tx cds.transaction is a internal synchronous method. That the moment you execute that, till the time it's not executed fully, the control won't move to the next statement. But whenever you are saying tx.run, this is a asynchronous method. Okay, this is a asynchronous method, and when you are saying it's a asynchronous method, it would call this method, it would keep on executing, but it would just return the promise which says the execution of this is pending. It is getting executed somewhere into the memory. The moment it gets executed, you would get the control. But for me to generate the employee ID, I would need the detail LR read. I would need the detail of this, right? And if I want the detail of LR read, I have to wait. I have to wait till the time when this statement is not getting fully executed. Okay, so we have to wait till the time this statement gets fully executed, and for that we do have a statement called await. So when you are saying await, what it would do is, even though it is a asynchronous language, it won't go to the next statement till the time the tx.run is not succeeded. We should have some output, either success or fail or any data or anything. Okay, for us to execute the next statement, and that's why we are saying await. Wait at this statement till the time you are not getting any output. And for us to use the await statement in a Node.js, the function whichever you are specifying should be asynchronous. So I have to specify async. So in Node.js, you would find many a function which are asynchronous because the internal component that you are using are asynchronous, and for an asynchronous function to use, you have to use await, and the moment you use await, so in this particular whole code, this is a synchronous one, this is synchronous, but this is asynchronous. Now as this is asynchronous, it would behave the synchronous way because the function is synchronous. I have not specified asynchronous earlier. If it behaves synchronously, but it does not have required time to get executed, so it would just say okay, I have call the respective party, they are getting the maximum of employee ID, but I would go to the next statement because you are saying that. But you are saying no, don't do that. Just wait for this statement to get executed. I'll make this function asynchronous. So you are saying asynchronous, it would wait over here till the time that gets executed. And if you write over here await and async, this LR read would be initialized by the time this next statements reach. Okay, so let's just restart the execution. Okay, and I'll just go over here and I'll just say again, send. Now I am over here. I'll just say execute this, connect to the database, initialize the transaction. I want a LR read. If you see, it just took some time. Yeah. Now I'll just check LR read. Just add. Okay, let me just clear out all the unnecessary variable. Can you see? I got an LR read which is having one column maximum EID. That's what I name it as, right? In the columns, which is saying EI underscore 01. Okay, so I am getting a value called EI underscore 01. Now it's all string manipulation. You can split it by underscore, and then you can say whatever right side component that you are getting, add it with a 1. And then you can assign it to employee ID, whatever you are assigning it over here, that would become your new employee ID. And now if you visualize what it is, this is nothing but a array. It is having a square bracket whose zeroth component, the very first component of it, is having max ID as a column, and it is having the value EI01. So this is an array of an object. In case you want more columns, let's just say for your execution or for your logic, you want select dot from columns and you want to specify 5 more column, you can say comma in single inverted comma name of the column, comma in single inverted comma another name of the column. That's how we write. And in case you don't specify dot columns over here, you are just saying select dot from, it would get you all the data. In case you want to specify the where clause, the same, it goes the same way. You can say dot where. So each and every component is now converted to a dot. You have to specify dot